Okay, now let's try this again. We're talking about nano LED. So you're going to hear variations of the same technology. Nanosys originally called it electroluminescent quantum dots. Then they called it quantum dot electroluminescence, so they can call it QDEL, right? Just sounds easier on the tongue. And then now they're rebranding it as nano LED. But essentially, it's all the same. So before we go in deeper and unpack this article, Samsung accelerates commercialization of elqd, otherwise known as QD-EL or nano LED, to fend off Chinese competitors. Like, what? What is this? Is it better than micro LED? Because everyone's thinking, isn't micro LED that next big thing? What's this? So we're going to talk about nano LED in the context of all that. So what we're going to cover today is a few topics. Hopefully we can get all done. What is nano LED, qdel, elqd? So we'll go over a rough high level differences between what that is versus what we have currently. Then we're going to talk about, well, okay, it's advanced, but how good is it? How good is this nano LED qdel? And we'll get your questions as well. So between each of these topics, I'll jump into the questions to see anything you might have and any other questions you might have about TVs coming up or TVs this year. And then, of course, you all want to know, okay, if it's that good, when is it coming? And I'm going to throw in my timeline, like, oh, well, that's awesome. When is that timeline? When do we expect it? What years? And I think really relevant to you guys is the consumers. Is the improvement versus the cost? So we're going to have that discussion because I think this is the most relevant to you guys. These TVs and technologies don't exist in a vacuum. There are competing technologies. There is still quantum dot OLED, maybe. There's still OLED from LG because this is Samsung pursuing this. We don't know if LG is going to be in on it as well. And what about the Chinese? Is CSOT, TCL, BOE, are they in on it too? Hisense, right? What are their approaches to this new technology that Samsung has publicly said this is the future? And this is kind of troubling for the Chinese, possibly, if their strategy didn't include nano LED, right? And so we're going to go over what that means first, and more specifically, what it means to you at the end. Okay, thank you everyone for coming. Hello to all the regulars. Hello, hello, hello. And this is what we're going to address. How much better is it than OLED? Or more importantly, how much better must it be compared to OLED? That is a discussion I think we have to, or you have to, take a step back and say, okay, let's say it's that much awesome, but it's $1 million. Then no one cares. But if it's slightly better, but it's half the price, oh, well, all day long, right? And so it all comes down to value, performance to value ratio. And I think that's something that Samsung needs to investigate as well. How much is it going to cost for them to produce this TV and sell it at a cost that pays for everything, right? Gives them a little profit, but that you will buy. So it's not enough to say how much better is it than OLED. What if it's not better, but it's half the price, right? So that's a lot of things that we have to consider in this. All right, so let's jump in to what is nano LED, qdel, and elqd. All right, what is nano LED, qdel, and electroluminescent QD? And this is, I think, the most critical detail. It is the only true self-emissive quantum dot technology panel, right? So up to this point, you hear quantum dots on everything. The original application of quantum dots is Samsung's QLED TV, right? But all it is an LCD TV with quantum dots in a layer in the backlight, and that layer in the backlight helps the LCD provide more pure colors, right? It helps remove red ghosting, but it's very passive, right? It only produces white light. So it's a pure white light that helps the LCD produce brighter, richer colors. That's it. That was the QLED TV, and we still use it today. All these mini LED TVs you see that say quantum dot mini LED, it's in the backlight. There's nothing anywhere else. It's not producing individual colors, right? Now, potentially in RGB LED, who knows? They might use quantum dots differently. Right now, it's only in the backlight. Now, the next layer of quantum dot is QD-OLED. That means the next evolution in its application. So with quantum dot OLED, QD-OLED, the OLED is generating the energy. The quantum dot is taken away from the backlight, right? There's no backlight. The backlight is pure colors of blue and maybe green this year. And the quantum dots are now color converters. It takes the blue energy and converts it red and green quantum dots. Takes the blue, generates the light, red, green, they control that light, and then the blue OLED passes through and scatters, and then some people complain because of the scatter plate. You have that slightly lifted screen when the lights are on, the TVs are off. But ultimately, this next evolution of quantum dot is quantum dot OLED, where the QDs are now actual colored quantum dots converting the blue light generated from the OLED into the multiple colors and whatnot. So that's QD-OLED. Now, the last step is if you can get individual quantum dots to emit brightness, meaning it receives an electrical current directly. In QD-OLED, it's the OLED that receives the electrical current. The OLED receives the current and then generates light, and then the light hits the quantum dot color converters, and you have the color. Currently, there are only 5 consumer purchasable self-emissive technologies that we've ever had. So the first is LCD. LCD is self-emissive, right? Individual LCD panel receives electrical current, boom, it displays an image, you got it. Not too bright, right? You got lights in the back to make it brighter, but LCD is self-emissive. Plasma, self-emissive, but much better, right? The plasma got brighter, richer. Wow, this is great, infinite contrast. Then OLED is called self-emissive, but there's a color filter, the WOLED color filter. You know, it's not quite as good as if you got all red, green, and blue individual OLEDs to self-emit, which you have on your cell phones, smartphone, tablets, RGB direct lit self-emissive OLED. So that's like the best of OLED. But when you take it to the size of a TV, you had burn-in, you had lifetime problems. So LG solved it with WOLED, where they have the OLEDs in such a way that produces a white color, right? The white subpixel with some color, but that white is what's generating all that brightness to take down the heat and the energy consumption that results in a shorter lifetime, burn-in, but then they have to use a color filter. So WOLED, you have the white subpixel, you have the color filter. That's why its color volume and color gamut is not as good as quantum dot OLED, where the quantum dots are color converting layer, there is no color filter. Okay, so that's where we are. And then you have micro LED. Micro LED is the current most advanced self-emissive technology. Well, that's 4, and lastly is the 5th one, which is this. NanoLED quantum dot electroluminescent, or QDEL, or electroluminescent quantum dot, all the same. You send a current into the quantum dot, individual quantum dots, red, green, blue, boom, they emit color. Okay. And so LCDs don't emit light. Remember I don't know if you're as old as I am, the old laptops, like way back in 1988, maybe 89, 90, 91, they had these early LCD laptops, and they were dim as heck because they didn't have a backlight. So they had emitting LCDs without a backlight, and it was impossible to use in a bright room, right? I mean, they had some kind of light in the back, but the older ones had no light, and it's like your watch, right? Your old LCD watches without some kind of light on the LCD. When you push a button, it kind of lights up. Oh, you could see it, but it's impossible to see. So LCDs do emit an image, but it's not bright enough. So correct, you do need some kind of a light source to kind of put a shine on it, whether it's behind it or on top of it, whatever that is. All right, so I think we're clear on why this is groundbreaking, but the question is, well, what took so long? Why don't we have it now if this thing is the next evolution? And this is where we're at. So it's more advanced than OLED. I think it's more advanced than micro LED, just so you guys know. Micro LED has been around, meaning individual LEDs, colored LEDs, they just made it a lot smaller so you can have a 4K resolution on some of these panel sizes, right? But micro LED, it's very difficult to manufacture it at that small size. That's why it's not a thing yet, but it's been around at larger sizes, at mini LED sizes, at what's larger than mini? One step above mini LED sizes, right? So as those LEDs get smaller and smaller, then you could create a pixel where you don't notice, or you could create an image where you don't notice those subpixels. So micro LED is just a smaller version of an older technology we've had for a while. So I believe that nano LED is a bit better than micro LED in that respect, which is it should be cheaper to make over time. But really what you guys want to know is, how good is it? Because it's one thing to say, okay, we know what it is now, right? It's more advanced, but how good is that? So before we get into that, let's see what questions you guys have. Have you seen a prototype? Yes, I have, in various stages of development. So the earliest stage of this qdel technology, when Nanosys still called it qdel, was they put it on a small, it's like a phone size thing, and it was terrible. The blue was very unstable, so there was no blue. So imagine all the colors of a rainbow without blue. That's what I had, right? So, lots of brown, lots of red, lots of green, no blue. So it was kind of like, yeah, that blue is either too weak or missing. And that's been an ongoing issue for a few years. And then most recently, I guess they got the blue stable enough to demonstrate a full, kind of like a laptop panel size thing. So Sharp showed off their version, and there were a couple of others at CES. So now it looks like a normal OLED display. The problem is, I hate to say this, everyone's saying, oh, it's amazing, it's so saturated, it's so bright. Without a competing panel next to it, whether it's a mini LED, whether it's an OLED RGB direct view, I don't know how people say it's brighter than existing technology. There was nothing next to it. So, it works, but two things. One, it was a prototype for display. We have no idea what the lifetime is. It looks good though, right? It's better. The blue is there now, but how long is this going to last? So right now, the prototypes look like it's the full spectra of colors and all that great stuff, but there are challenges for sure. And Mac wants this. 10,000 nits, 12 bits, full Dolby Vision, better color, better life of the panel, better heatsink, better control, better speed on the Ethernet, better AI, right? Let's just throw the shopping list in there. Better audio. I love it. That's what he wants for his next Nano LED TV. All right. Can it get as bright as micro LED? So that is a very stacked question, and this is why. Micro LED technically can get to 10,000 nits. It will never happen. If micro LED gets above 2,000 nits, it gets so hot that everything that holds it in place will start to melt. The plastic, the casing, anything that has a certain melting point, it's going to melt as micro LED gets above farther and farther than 2,000 nits. And so there's a thermal efficiency problem here with micro LED. Most, if not all, micro LED installations, they're not going to go above 1,000 nits, and it's already warm. So let's talk about 1,000 nits. If you've ever seen the wall or any of these things, and it's around 1,000 nits, 1,200, get close to it. It is super hot. So when people say, yeah, micro LED can get to 10,000, I cannot wait to get to the home. You want the whole thing to melt apart? Have you ever seen a TV made of metal? Of course not. Mostly it's plastic parts. That's not going to work. And forget the plastic parts, right? Everything, the PCB board, right? It doesn't work right now. Micro LED, great in theory, but that's why it's all commercial signage with giant fans behind it. So if you've ever been to a studio lot where they're using Sony's volume, right? It's this it's replaced CGI. So basically the entire background is all micro LEDs, and it's like 1,000 little monitors, right? All around you, but it's high resolution. Behind that array, giant fans, AC blowing like crazy. This thing overheats, and it's not even that bright. It's definitely bright enough for movie making, but it's not 10,000 nits, nowhere close, because they want the thing to last. So when you say, can it get as bright as OLED? That's not a relevant question. Can it get brighter than OLED without overheating and destroying the TV? I think it can, because micro LED, we know now, It's not, well, and this could be another reason why Apple is not using micro LED for its watches. As efficient as it should be, it's so expensive to get to certain levels of production efficiency, pixel pitch. It's beginning to seem less and less worthwhile. I am more convinced than ever that micro LED, the way we have it now, it's not viable. There's too many issues to overcome right now. All right. And let's move on to how good is NanoLED or qdel in theory, right? So I have to say this is based on what we know of NanoLED. First, better color reproduction. So when you separate individual pixels, red, green, blue, it has a narrower band. The spectra is more quote-unquote color accurate. That's why QD-OLED is more color accurate than WOLED. WOLED has that white subpixel. It kind of dilutes everything. And so if you look at these power spectrum, color power spectrum graphs, the colors aren't individual spikes, right? Red, green, blue, right? So RGB micro LED has those high peak spikes of red, green, blue. QD-OLED similarly, right? Not as peaky as red, green, blue RGB micro LED, but much more so than WOLED. And WOLED this year, with the introduction of primary RGB into their system, right? It's still WOLED, but it's definitely improved, but still definitely not quite there yet. And that's why Sony, Hisense, and Hisense are so excited about RGB mini LED. Same thing. Putting RGB in the backlight gave them that better color accuracy with the narrow color peaks, and nano LED will promise the exact same thing. So better color reproduction, but we're kind of already there with better color, with really good color reproduction at under 1,000 nits. Can it do that at 8,000 nits? Now, why do I say 8,000? And so this is why I put 8,000 nits for Samsung, for TCL, for Hisense, whoever is developing this next generation panel. They're going to have some performance metrics, right? Like, oh, we need to do this, that, and the other. And I'm telling them right now, unless you're getting 8,000 nits, don't even bother. And this is why. LG G5, right? Or Samsung S95F. 4,000 nits within the next 12 months, it's going to be a thing. They're already there in certain situations. You know, raw panel, you do this and that, but basically in the lab, it's at 4,000 nits. And then when you get it accurate by next year, even the year after, we'll be at 4,000 nits. So 4,000 nits, OLED is doing. In the next 18 months, I have every confidence that at an accurate white point, 4,000 nits peak brightness, at some point, it's going to be good to go. Okay, we're there. So what does nano LED bring to the table unless you go twice as bright? So from 4,000 to 6,000 nits, you guys aren't going to notice the difference. It's not a big deal. It has to be 4,000 to 8,000. That's when twice as bright makes a difference. You see that jump in brightness. It's not even that significant a jump. It's just noticeable. And it's got to be that minimum. If you're going to go from 4,000 to the next level of technology, if it's not 8,000, then it better be dirt cheap. So if you're saying this is more technically superior, then that's technically superior, doubling the brightness. But if it's slightly brighter, I wouldn't say that's technically superior. Mini LED is there, RGB LED is way past that. You're competing against technologies, and you guys, I know you guys are saying, brightness is not important. And I respond to you, look at the crowds, look at the sales. It may not be important, but perception is everything, right? Among purists and enthusiasts, we know what brightness really is. Look, the content isn't even there. I'm with you. But I'm just telling you, people are buying TVs. Is it brighter? Can I get it brighter? I mean, this constant question, that's the easy sell. And if you're telling me, wait, you mean my TCL, that's 1/3 the price, is 8,000 nits and this thing's putting out 4,000? Is this one of those director's cut TVs I'm paying twice as much for? Good luck selling that to the masses. Samsung cannot be redirecting all its resources to sell TVs that appeal to that 5%. They need this TV to beat OLED. It's not good enough to be a subset that sells worse than OLED. Remember, it's displacing OLED. Remind yourself that. If it's displacing OLED, then it sure as heck better be brighter than OLED, or the masses will not agree. Like, wait, is this a bait and switch? You're selling us a more expensive TV that's less bright. Where's my G5? Are they still selling it at eBay? So keep that in mind. And that's why I say 8,000. So guys, if you're in the lab, get there, because if you don't, I don't know how you're going to justify beating LG G7, right? Like where they're going to be by the G7 generation. So the better color reproduction, I don't think you guys care about that anymore because the content, I think color reproduction is fine as far as I'm concerned. It's really, can it get brighter? But we're going to talk about the value of brightness. So that's kind of, this is so nuanced because focus groups don't really reflect what you guys do. So we're going to talk about what's important to you all. And here at Nitro, love this comment. You know, my Bravia 7 is only 2400 nits and it hurts my eyes. You know what? It may not even be 2400 nits and it hurts your eyes, right? And also, if you're watching 2400 nits in a dark room, oh yeah, it's going to hurt your eyes. In a bright room, that 2400 nits makes sense, right? Because in a bright room, your eyes are shifting from rod to cones, whatever, right? Ambient light, and then your pupils are not as dilated. But in a dark room, your pupils are wide open dilated. You're hypersensitive, and you got 2400 nits from a small screen blowing into your eyeballs. I agree. Hopefully, you don't have 2400 nits in a completely dark room because that should not be happening. Like SDR at 2400 nits in a dark room, no bueno. Full screen brightness is what we need the most. And so that's a fair point. We know OLED right now is around 400 nits full screen, right? That's where we are with the latest G5/S95F. At least this NanoLED has to do that, but I think let's double that, 1000 nits, right? Nice round number, 900 to 1000 nits. Can it do that? Because Mini LED is way beyond that. And so remember, you're not in a vacuum. You're not competing with OLED. You're competing with, well, we'll go over the timeline and you'll see what I'm talking about. Okay, this is like, I want to get these topics through so we can actually have a fun discussion with you guys. And let's talk about when is it coming. And so this is the part where they have a few things to overcome. So first of all, Samsung itself says a few years, but why a few years, right? It's to overcome challenges. And what are those challenges? We'll list them. But a few years, which could be anything from 2 years to 10 years, right? It's all a few years. But more importantly, what is it must they do over the next 2 years? And we kind of touched on this at the beginning, stability. The blue was definitely the last color to get right in terms of that stability. But there is a benchmark. Can it outlast OLED? And we're going to use the LG G5, right, the current model, as an example. LG's technology is so mature. They are the only TV company that offers a 5-year panel replacement warranty for that model because, you know, they've maxed out everything that it needs to max out in terms of thermal efficiency and durability and brightness. I mean, they've balanced it perfectly. They got the software, they got the firmware. They know what they need to do. This TV, 5-year replacement warranty, and it includes burn-in. Knock yourself out. No LCD TV, no Mini LED TV offers anything more than 1 or 2 years. This is 5 years plus labor, but it's the panel that's expensive. So can it offer something like that when it's released? And, you know, we don't know. They need to work on that in the lab, but that's why it takes a few years. They're going to make sure it's at least going to match an OLED, at least, right? And then it comes to efficiency. We talked about the 8,000 nits. Can it get there, but then produce less heat? Because all materials are unstable. It's just at what degree is it unstable? And so with that stability in mind, how bright can it get? Is there a temperature where suddenly the stability starts to fall apart and you cannot get brighter than that? Is that 4,000 nits? Does it cap out at 6,000? These are things they have to test in the lab because if you heat something enough, there's always a point that you pass and that's it. That chemical property completely changes and brightness always produces heat. How much of that energy is converted to light? How much of it comes off as heat? And if more of it is converted to light, it's more efficient, right? It's producing more light. But if too much of it is converted to heat, stability is affected. And so the question is, what is their benchmark for brightness in terms of how bright does it have to get? And if we're down to 2000 nits peak brightness, like, are we going backwards? So that's something that they know. Sony's already announced grading monitors are 4000 nits, so the 4000 nits is a minimum. You gotta at least match OLED. You cannot go back. Now, if you match OLED though, then it comes to cost. Do it all larger, but it's gotta be less than OLED. If you do it all for the same price of OLED, what have you just done? You've just spent billions to get to where OLED is. That's not gonna move the needle for anyone. You have to do it for less. And the new size is 65, 77, 85, 98, and so forth. OLED cannot get to 97-inch without charging you more than $15,000. Whereas Mini LED, you're at 98-inch, $5,000, done. So that's why LG doesn't even care if they can't bring that down. That's not their high volume. But in the future, will it be a high volume? So all these things have to be taken into account before they release the TV. And let me introduce my timeline, and you guys, and so this is the key. The timeline is actually this. It's not in a vacuum. These guys aren't working on it alone. Remember I said that TCL and Hisense and BOE are actively working on this right now. It's a race to get this out. Unlike OLED, where LG and Samsung, right? They both produce OLED, except Samsung is very focused on RGB direct view OLED for smartphones and TVs, whereas LG is all about TVs and smartphones and tablets and so forth. Well, they had years to get ahead of China. They have the market, but already BOE is catching up. Their OLED technology, RGB direct view for Apple specifically, it's only a matter of time before Apple goes, BOE, you got it. You nailed it. It's perfect. The price is right. We're shifting all production to you. BOE, take our contract. And at that point, Samsung and LG is in big trouble. We're maybe 2 years away from that, right? So BOE is already close. They got rejected recently because Apple's like, you know what? The reliability, the color accuracy, whatever it is, it's still not there. But it's very close. Keep working at it. So for Samsung to read the tea leaves 5 years from now, they need to start now. So here's my predicted timeline to stay ahead of China. They don't have time because China is actively working on this. And unlike Samsung, who may have a couple billion in the bank, China has an entire treasury of the Communist Party in the bank to do this because China has already publicly stated they want to dominate global panel production, technology, whatever that means. LCD, done. Let's put it in the bank. OLED, that's next. We're getting close. Let's put that in the bank. What's left? Well, micro LED or nano LED. Micro LED is not worth it. Nano LED, it's worth it. Let's hit nano LED. So if China is investing what I think it's investing in TCL and BOE and whoever is interested, this is what Samsung has to do. 2026, next year, the prototypes better be near ready for suppliers to look at so they can source it and start making phones in 2027. Why phones? Smaller panels, easier to make, right? You have a lot more. If you reject panels, it doesn't cost as much because it's tiny, whatever, right? It's much easier to get phones right or small tablets. Just get that done, get the experience. But the next year, go bigger. Now laptop size. The year after that, you got to introduce a TV, 65-inch TV, and then hopefully a larger TV, 77-inch, 85-inch by 2030. This is my timeline for when Samsung must introduce this stuff to stay ahead of China. When I say stay ahead, I'm talking at best 2 years. I don't know. China might be doing this in 2027. So this is the thing. Are you even ahead? Maybe just to keep up with China. So this is like my best case scenario for Samsung. But given the article, right, it's the article that we talked about right at the beginning from Business Korea, there is a sense of urgency at Samsung. They are so intent on getting this right. They've pulled in Samsung Display. They've pulled in Samsung Visual. Samsung Visual is in charge of the TVs. They were like playing around with micro LED. Samsung Visual's playing around with RGB micro LED. And Samsung Electronics mothership is like, stop it. Let's just all focus this nano LED. Let's get this right now. So they pulled in all of their subs to do this. So we know it's serious. And LG is like, we got no money. do what you can. We're just going to try to keep OLED going here. Keep the shop warm for the Korean market while you go figure this out. So yes, there's a sense of urgency. All right, let's see what we have here. We was late. Hey, Matt, don't worry. I have more to say. Just keep it up, my friends. Keep it up. Stay. Hang out. Always come back later. Any questions, just throw it out there. It doesn't have to be about NanoLED. We could talk about anything. But it'd be nice if you have questions about NanoLED or competing advanced technologies. That's going to come about maybe 5 years from now. I'm thinking the way Samsung is putting everything into this, and it's a survival mode. It's an existential crisis. And I'm not overstating the issue. The pace at which TCL and Hisense are growing, unless Samsung does something drastic, they will start to see the market share diminish to a point where there is no return. And now that they have the cash flow, they need to invest all of that into that next generation that will work. They've wasted the last 3 years working on micro LED, utter fail. They've given up. Let's move on to nano LED. So that's where we're at. And where's RGB micro LED and all this? If they're sourcing it from Hisense, that's the last thing you want, is to fund another Chinese company who will take your money and work on nano LED. So I think the way things are going, I don't even know if Samsung's going to release an RGB micro LED. I think whatever they have, sell it, focus everything to get this out the door, because that's going to be an expensive TV anyway. It's not like you're going to make money selling 10 a year. Don't. Just move on. Get this nano LED out the door before 2030, please. So Jesse asks, or comments, LG Display's 4-stack WOLED panels are built in LG Display's Chinese factory. Yep. LG Display's Gen 2 WOLED panels are made in its South Korean factory. So at the end of the day, where the factories are is just what factories can handle the technology stack that they're doing, and where's their most advanced factory, right? If it has to be in China, so be it. But it's not really a big deal because, it's just what it is. What can you do? Got some super chats here, so let's go through that. Hey, graphically challenged. qdel must replace QD-OLED to fix prices and magenta ambient light issues. So QD-OLED is not perfect. No panel is, but with each incremental evolution of the panel technology, right? From quantum.OLED to quantum.electroluminescent TV, we hope to fix these things. Like from WOLED to QD-OLED, what did they fix? Uniformity is way better, but now we have this slight touch of magenta tint, and then you have that scatter plate over the blue, which is the ambient light issue. It absorbs that light and spits it back out. It might look a little magenta, who knows? But yeah, there is always a flaw in the design somewhere, and then once you see it, you can't unsee it, and then you hope the next evolution addresses that. And Dave, thank you for the super chat. Does LG's new panel still use white subpixel? Yes. Or is it now straight RGB? No. And that's why I didn't like the name they gave it, primary RGB. They make it sound like it's a direct self-emissive RGB, like their phones and tablets. The answer is absolutely not. It is still color filter, white subpixel, but with additional colors in that OLED stack, it is adding more color volume and color luminance despite the white subpixel and despite the color filter, but it's still there. Because that's how you keep it from burning in, still, with that technology stack. All right, thank you for that. And with this comment, FOMO tells the best TV bedtime stories. A long time ago, there was a TV called XRP8. Yes. Thank you, my friend. A long time ago, in a land far away, there was a CRT named Trinitron. Okay. Consumer. Now we're talking about you, finally. You guys got the backstory. You have the context. You have the timeline. I'm going to leave this timeline up, actually. Okay. But it's actually about you. You're buying these TVs, right? It's like that building a bridge to nowhere. If you build a bridge but no one's going to cross it, what's the point of building a bridge? If you make this nano LED, qdel, elqd, and no one buys it, what's the point? So these, I believe, are the important value propositions that you, my friends, are considering. I am considering if I'm going to buy it. right? And it's two things, because I saw plasma, TV gamer, and I figured, you know what, throw in gaming. But more importantly, is nano LED cheaper than OLED versus mini LED value? Meaning, currently, OLED growth is kind of stalled. And if it grows, maybe 1% if they're lucky. But it's not growing at the same pace as mini LED is growing and taking market share. Why is that? Well, you saw my reviews of the QM6K and the QM7K. You get a humongous QM7K, let's say by Black Friday, 85 inches. It's going to be an HDR impact beast that's going to satisfy most people, right? And most people are not enthusiasts. Even enthusiasts would be like, wow, actually looks pretty good. So OLED at its current value is overpriced. And I hate to say it, as much as I love OLED, whether it's QD-OLED or regular LG's G5, it's too expensive for the common man, because many of you ask, well, yes, I know, FOMO, you like the G5 or you like the S95S or S95D or F. Is there something in $2,000 range? I'm like, maybe a 55-inch G4 from last year. And I go, no, I need an 85-inch. So it's got to be cheaper than OLED to make a dent in their. I mean, if you're trying to say, I got to replace OLED and compete with China, it cannot be more expensive than OLED. Let's stop right there. That's a hard stop. You guys in the lab, Samsung, Chirag at Samsung Display, you guys know this. If you cannot sell it in volume, it's not worth the investment, right? This is why Porsche struggled with the 911. As beautiful and great as that car is, they didn't sell enough of it. They had to sell the Boxster, the Cayenne, and then the Cayman, and then what else did they have? The Macan, right? It has to be affordable. Is there an affordable version of nano LED for the masses? And if the masses are looking at 65 to 77-inch TVs as the new size standard, by 2030, it better be a 77-inch TV that's less expensive than an LG B5 today. Whatever the LG B5 costs today, in $20, $30, it better be cheaper, or you guys aren't going to move. You're going, oh, I'll just go with mini LED. And that's why it's always in the context of the competition, because China is looking at this very closely. They're like, now we know we make dashboards, right? So electric vehicle dashboards. So all of that is in play. So we know that China is going to try and replace micro LED or OLED dashboards with this nano LED. But what about TVs? Well, while we're at it, we'll make larger TV panels. Remember, it's inkjet printed. And inkjet printed potentially has less waste than any form of manufacturing, right? So you have OLED manufacturing, you have micro LED, and so forth. And the most wasteful is micro LED. That's why I discounted it completely. They have yet to find any solution other than, we interviewed the gentleman from England who had a solution to waste. But the individual micro LEDs themselves are very expensive, whereas the individual quantum dot chemicals are less expensive. And I think scaled up, the economies of scale, nano LED has potential to be less expensive than OLED. And I think that's another reason why they're going after this. Now, initially, it may be the same price as OLED. I think that's their goal, is at least keep it the same price. But once they scale up their economies of scale, then it should drop less than OLED and hopefully just barely more expensive than mini LED equivalent TVs, right? And then lastly is the gaming chops. Can it do 240 hertz? I mean, by 2030, 240 hertz TVs, come on. So let's just assume that's going to happen by 2030. Like we're at 165 this year. Next year is 188. Let's keep adding, and then by 2030 is 240, maybe more. Okay, so let's throw that in there. But more importantly, though, it doesn't have to get that much brighter than OLED as long as it's much less expensive than OLED. But it can't be less bright than OLED. It's just because mini LED will eat its lunch. But what I forgot to mention, though, is by 2030, there is another TV out there that is like mini LED. That's RGB LED. We know it's going to be expensive in 2026, right? Sony, Hisense, TCL, and Samsung will be releasing the RGB LEDs based on what we've heard, but that's 2026. By 2030, all those RGB mini LED TVs will be the standard for all these makers. Hisense, TCL, Sony, Samsung even, right? They're going to source it elsewhere. Can you beat the RGB mini LED in 2030 at an 85-inch size? Like, I don't know, because how bright will that TV be? At least 5,000 nits. I mean, we're already 4,000 nits today in 2025, right? Sony already said, yeah, they already got 4,000 nits. That's their target. That's only 2025. Hisense is targeting higher, above 5,000 nits. So by 2030, these RGB mini LED TVs at 85-inch, at 98-inch will be easily 6,000 nits without even trying, right? And their blooming will be well controlled by that time. I mean, is Nano LED only going to be for cars and tablets? I mean, maybe they're just going to give it up and not have it on TVs. This is something that I don't know because, well, so this kind of throws it on you guys now. So it's your turn to kind of tell me, because in the next few years, as RGB mini LED, and you saw all the hype around it, right? As the prices become reasonable and come down to the prices we expect of a flagship mini LED TV, are you interested in paying more for this Nano LED, given what we said about its improvements, slightly better color accuracy, probably the same brightness? I cannot imagine it would be brighter. You know, what are your thoughts on Nano LED? Because I'm trying to see if this is even a TV technology, or is it going to be limited, just like RGB Direct View OLED, to smartphones and tablets? Remember that. RGB OLED is still only on your phone. And it's been on your phone since when? Like 2016, when it was in the lab still. They've only kept it on the phone since then. They tried to bring it out. Samsung had bad burn-in. They pulled it back down to smaller sizes. So since 2016, it's never left that small form factor. So don't assume just because Nano LED appears on your phone in 2027 that it will ever leave your phone, because RGB OLED never did. So that's some context for you guys. And yeah, let me know. Like, are you excited about Nano LED just because you're excited about any panel technology? And Samsung knows full well that unlike all the other technologies, they are on an even playing field with China. Wherever they are in the development of Nano LED, I would say China is no more than a year behind them, if that, 6 months maybe. And China could be just an acquisition away from catching up. So if Samsung's smart, they are acquiring as many. Well, Nanosys is currently owned by a Japanese conglomerate, right? Shay. So Shay acquired Nanosys, and this move to Nano LED definitely is boosting Nanosys' prospects because they supply the quantum dots. So, okay. I think we've set this table for you guys to tell me what your thoughts are on Nano LED, elqd, electroluminescent QD, and qdel. I prefer to call it qdel. I wish Nanosys would bring that back, but apparently the word LED is a big hit around the world, so they're calling it Nano LED. It's all the same thing, electroluminescent quantum dots. All right. And of course, Plasma is saying, yes, paying more is fine because we have a lot of money. Gamers have a lot of money because they live alone with their parents and no bills to pay, other than paying off their 5090 cards. I know gamers, and that's all they love. I get you. Are there enough of you, Plasma? Are there enough of you eating canned beans at cost of everything else to get that best TV? That's the question. Love it. Neo qdel. Yeah, I think Samsung will call it Neo qdel. That's it wouldn't surprise me. And this is my point for anyone looking into this to bring it to TVs. By the time it's released as a TV in 2030, and I think realistically 2030 is when we're going to see it at TVs, right? Based on my projections here, assuming they're accelerating development. By that time, I think 85 inches will be a thing, more so than even 65 and 77 today. So let's say at worst, at smallest, is 75 inches. But a lot of people will be buying 85 to 100. What does the cost look like then? And is it going to outperform whatever is existing in 2030? RGB mini LED. Can it outperform RGB mini LED for a little bit more? has to cost less, right? So Dave says, this does not interest me unless it releases at 85 to 100 inches. I'm done with smaller TVs. Yeah, and that's why I think in the old days, when you had a new technology, you're pretty confident, 24, 27, 32-inch TVs, we can do it, right? The CRT days. Now it's like, can it cover my entire wall? No, you know what? I'll pass. And hey, thank you, Smart Face. Hit like if you enjoy this discussion. I know there's a lot of articles out there, but it doesn't dive deep enough into, well, what does this mean to consumers? Is it just smartphones? And if it goes to TVs, what do they have to do? And we're here for you to see, hey, what does it need to do to get larger, if it makes sense to get larger? All right. Lisa, I'm not done with smaller TVs. I don't have space for larger. So Lisa, this is very interesting. So when I spoke to John Archer in Tokyo, right, he said to me, we as reviewers always assume that the size of your TV is dependent on your seating distance, which is, of course, makes sense. He noticed that in the UK, where definitely the houses are smaller, the living rooms are smaller, but as long as the wall is big enough, they're going to put it on. They don't care because it's become a point of pride to have a giant TV, and they'll still sit 6 feet away from a 100-inch TV. It's okay. They just walk down the hall and look at an angle, whatever. They just want the 100-inch TV if they could afford it. So assuming they could afford it, they're going to throw in the 100-inch TV like in the middle of their kitchen. Like, it becomes a point to talk about, a point of pride, a display. It's displaying art most of the day. And then when they watch TV, I'm assuming, find a way to kind of shrink it so you can sit closer and maybe just enjoy the brightness and the complete coverage from 6 feet away. So it's a completely different mentality when getting a large TV in these countries where you don't have the space. So Lisa, maybe you should consider a TV, not so much seating distance, but just, can it fit in your wall? If it fits in your wall, go for it. Well, look, Steve has a supportive girlfriend. She says the bigger the better. Yeah, definitely talking about TVs. And this is what I think is happening. I hope qdel comes to my next Mercedes Maybach 3D displays. Definitely, it's these smaller displays where it starts off, right? It's going to be on cars, assuming stability and temperature, right? Cars, it's got to be both sub-zero and over 100 degrees because, the people in Dubai will be buying these Maybachs. Can it handle temperatures upwards of 180 degrees Fahrenheit? Oh no, Lisa, her walls don't even extend past 90 inches. Okay, I'm sorry. I got you, girl. And of course, most people are like Dave, and I'm with you, Dave. I've watched the 90-inch TV from around 7.5 feet away. I'm fine with it. I think it's perfect. I could actually stand to sit a little closer. IMAX, I go to for that immersion, and that's IMAX right there. Yeah. As more and more people realize, wait a minute, I normally sit this far when I go to IMAX. What's the big deal? Tom, I think this is next. Where are the gesture-controlled interactive full wall screens from the Minority Report? And they're see-through, right? It's like transparent. It should be coming. It should be coming. With AI, the way it is, they'll read your gestures, right? They'll analyze the gestures. Yeah, I think we didn't have the processing to recognize the gesture. LLM could easily be applied to visual cues, not just text. And they're doing that right now. They're converting visual cues in the LLM model the way they are converting text and context in the LLM model. So using language and words, now using images and meaning, it's being done. I mean, believe me, I'm doing this and they're taking my YouTube videos, downloading it and saying, hey, what is FOMO doing when he does that, right? And it's, he's just being confusing. Hey, we're all adding to AI learning right now, right? Every time we do a funny gesture, I'm teaching the algorithm. Just don't get paid for it, unfortunately. Martin, I love this. As a cinema guy, I approve of the IMAX chat. Do you mean the chat in IMAX size? Or we're just talking IMAX? And so here, Martin, actually, I do have a question for you guys who love IMAX theater. So I forgot which was it? It was, I want to say, the Avengers, the very last one, right? So I saw it in IMAX, incredible. And then I also saw it in Dolby Cinema, and the audio was significantly better. But the image was not as immersive. And I said to my son, he's like teenager at the time, loved the movie experience. Do you prefer a larger screen with just normal sound? I mean, IMAX is okay. It's not terrible. But Dolby Cinema was much better. The audio, the sound effects, the precision, the immersion, the moving chairs, right? The Dolby Cinema, because the subwoofers cannot get below 60 hertz, it just can't, right? There's not enough subwoofers to get you below 60. It just, the rumble is missing, so your chairs are rumbling. So the chairs fulfill that sub 60. IMAX doesn't have that. They have hard, uncomfortable seats. There is no reclining in the real IMAX theater. It's all very high up, right? You're like vertically looking down. He and I both preferred the Dolby Cinema for its audio. And I was very surprised. I thought I'd be the one, and he goes, no, we both enjoyed the Dolby Cinema more. And so ever since then, we've never been back to IMAX. For movies that we know that the audio is important, like action movies like Avengers, but if it's more like, watching people skiing down a slope, yeah, I'd probably go to IMAX. But if it's action where I know, like Mission Impossible, right, I'd probably go with the Dolby Cinema. Okay. Oh, Martin, you agree with me. Dolby Cinema is a step up for the audio because obviously it's not as large. But yeah. Okay. And James says, my largest TV is 55 inches and it's 10 years old. Well, my friend, if your TV fails in another 10 years, get ready to upgrade to a 75 inch and maybe your world will change because you might have a nano LED TV. And we have Christian. Welcome to the super chat. Welcome to the chat, my friend. Always welcomed. Where is the Samsung lineup live stream? Your home in the UK dropped a S9. My homie in the UK dropped the S95F video. Well, to be honest, us in the US, we've been embargoed out of this little review race. So it won't drop until April 14 once, is that Black Friday? I told Samsung, like, I don't get it. You guys fly me to New Jersey, like everyone else. So all these American journalists and reviewers, we get there. Like, oh, by the way, you can't talk about it until April 14. And my first reaction was, but last year, you sold the TVs before I was allowed to talk about it. Does that make sense? Should I be allowed to talk about it before the TVs go on sale? He goes, yeah, we screwed up last year. Won't happen this year. Their embargo was carefully curated so that, the launch, everything matches. The TVs won't be available. Apparently, someone didn't get the memo. So next year, maybe we'll be timely to help you guys out. But at this point, I can't say anything. Other than the S95F looked great at CES. Go figure, right? But yeah, thank you for rubbing salt into my wounds, my friend. Too funny. And Christopher has a 78-inch now, and you want an 85 to 90-inch next. So 85 inch is good, or a 98. Skip the 90 because the best TVs are 85 or 98. 90 is a really weird size. You don't want that. It hasn't been properly vetted, I don't believe. So, but then 78-inch must have been another weird size. So go for an 85 or go for a 98, Christopher. And your live TV reviews are the absolute best. Why, thank you. And the next one, what is the next one? So it depends. The G5s I hear are shipping here somewhere in the US, right? So if you have a G5, let me know. But apparently people in the US have received the G5 already, maybe from Robert. Yes, the next live stream, well, that's in May. I'm going to have a G5 S95F, maybe at the larger sizes, right? We're trying to see how that looks. But we're going to have day-long comparisons for everything. Movies, gaming, sports. So we will thoroughly beat those two TVs and get a full understanding of what they all mean in May. But before then, we're going to have, I'm hoping the QM8K will be coming. We might compare the QM7. I think the QM7K for just a few minor items might do sports, but I don't know if that's worth a live stream. But the QM8K, we might get that before the G5 lands. So we'll see. But yeah, I'm going to try to do one more live stream review. Hopefully another TV. Oh, Hisense. Hisense will be dropping some TVs in the coming weeks. So yes, a couple more live to come. So just for clarification, is it okay for us to assume the Samsung embargo end date will coincide with the release? Better news for you as a consumer. They will put the TVs on sale, I think a week before my embargo lifts, which is even more confounding, but that's just how it is. I said, wait, it says I'm allowed to share prices on this date, but I can't talk about the TVs until a week later. Like, yeah. I go, so when is the TV available for purchase? Oh, the minute you announce the prices, it's going to be ready to go. I'm like, that's even worse than last year. So I don't know. But yes, so I think my embargo date is like April 14 or something like that. But you probably could buy the TV a week before then. So yeah, get the TVs and knock yourself out. I'm hoping they send me the TV before then. So at least when the embargo date lifts, I have the TV and say, look at me. But you never know. You never know with logistics and all of that. This is wonderful. This comment by Mishkath Zulfer. So first, mini LED, then RGB mini LED, then RGB LED, and then quantum dot ultraviolet, and now it's QDel nano LED. Yes, are you keeping track? So let's actually deconstruct this as far as what's happening. So mini LED is already now, it's here. RGB mini LED, definitely by the end of the year, Hisense should have its 1/16-inch, as if any of us are going to pay 20 grand for that, but you never know. And then early next year, even more RGB mini LED, hopefully from Samsung and Sony, right? 26, that's a 2026 model. And then the Sony is the RGB LED. So Sony's version of RGB LED should be a more sophisticated approach, but similar technology stack as RGB mini LED. So that's happening in 2026. QD ultraviolet may not happen at all, given that QDel is skipping it. Because QD ultraviolet is just a better version of QD-OLED, except it uses ultraviolet micro LEDs, and it uses 3 color converting layers instead of just 2. But then QDel takes all the quantum dots and make them self-emissive, and so Samsung is saying, forget QD UV. I'm going straight to QDel. So I think QD UV, based on these announcements, is a transitional technology that never had a chance to take on life. QDel is what Samsung's focused on, and wherever Samsung turns, everyone else is like, maybe they have something there. So I think, and then you see the timetable above. Hopefully we see some phones or watches and stuff, maybe a Samsung watch with QDel in 2027, but they got to have a TV by 2030, a large size TV. What is it? FOMO, use a VPN and tell us, or use a membership program and tell you, or start a Discord channel and tell you, right? One day I'll figure a way. I assume and hope that S90F retains the glossy screen. Yeah, I do too, right? Give the consumers an option, especially if you're going to hold back brightness a little and give them a glossy screen to kind of counterbalance that. I completely agree. Yes, so we have the poll. Great point. Let me pull up that poll. I think because you guys did such a good job voting on that poll. Let's see what we got here. There we go. Let's put up this poll. So if you haven't voted, go and vote. Make your voice heard. I'll just put this over here. All right. Let's take that out. Okay, I think that's good right there. All right. And why would you pay more than flagship QD-OLED, assuming no increase in TV size? So, if you have OLED available to you, 65-inch, would you ever pay more for a similarly sized nano LED? And in the poll I had, well, it's got to hit at least 10,000 nits or double the OLED, right? So if it's the G5, at least 8,000 nits, and it's got to be at least longer lasting, we're going to pay more, and 240 hertz panel or better. So the number one is all of the above. So clearly, when you guys are buying a TV that's expensive, you deservedly so should get it all. And I think this is where nano LED TVs, oh wait, that's why they call it NanoLED. NanoSys is the name of the company. NanoLED is their technology. Oh, and here I'm thinking in terms of nano as a measure of size. Silly me. All of the above. So, and this is only if you pay more. If it's the same price as OLED, it better be something slightly brighter. I'm hoping, because if it's dimmer, for sure, people will just go to mini LED. Because, well, actually, that's a good question for you guys. If nano LED doesn't end up being brighter, just more efficient, right? For the same brightness, it just uses less energy. And it doesn't last longer. It lasts the same. And its gaming chops are exactly the same as whatever G series is available. Would it matter to you? I think you guys would buy it anyway, because as long as it isn't worse. But the key is price, really. I think. And the problem with OLED is it's not taking the market by storm. Its growth is very slow. So yeah, it's not good enough. Samsung could not do this unless they could take over the TV market, which brings to question whether or not this will even be introduced to the TV market, I believe. So, yeah, I don't know. Ah, here we go. Optimist. Div Requiem says, qdel is coming way sooner than 2030. 2028, we will have the sets. Trust me. Companies are already deeply invested in these technologies after micro LED has failed. I agree with you. It's cheaper and offers a better picture. So you're saying 2028. So that assumes that 2026, next year, we have samples available for the TV makers to test. First of all, you have to have tooling. So in 2026, the tooling has to be there for mass production of anything. Mass production of TVs, I believe, is probably harder than mass production of phones because the panel sizes are larger. So, boy, you're really aggressive. They're going straight to TVs. So you're thinking 2028. Man, I don't know. You're skipping a whole lot of steps to get there. And the TV market, unless it's cheaper than OLED, you won't sell enough of them to repay yourself back. But you might be able to sell enough to Apple for their Apple Watch, for their phones, for their tablets to justify that investment. That's why I said phones and laptops. Is Apple is always your first client, your first customer. You spend 2026 selling to them. Hey, look at this technology. They're going to qualify it. Like, oh, this is amazing. Give it to me in 2027. Then you make all that money in 2027 and 2028. And you invest that to TV so you can have it out in 2029. But hey, you know what? I hope it comes sooner. I really do. I just don't see the volume to justify that level of investment because the low-hanging fruit is always your small devices. It has the highest margins and the highest volumes. It's like a 1-2 punch that everybody wants to see. Actually, Josh brings up a great point. Do we even have to improve display technology any further? Given limited resources to make TVs better, how about just focus on 240 hertz and better AI? That gets you quicker returns, lower investment, and your TVs are still selling. Maybe consumers don't really care about nano LED or any of this. Is it? How cheap is it? Oh, it looks good. It's got AI? I'll take it. Josh, you have something there. I think that comment actually may end up being more relevant than everything else that they're doing with Nano LED. And see you later, Jason. Thanks for dropping by. It was fun seeing you guys chat it up. See you next live stream. Okay, Lazy, my full prepper. Is the TLC 678 98 inch from Costco any good? You get what you pay for. It is an entry-level product. You buy it for the size. What you see is what you get. Don't expect any more. If you like what you see, that's fine. For the price, it's got no competitors. So is it any good? Well, obviously they have better TVs, but you're paying more. So what I suggest is bring it home. If you like it, keep it, because how good it is relative, right? Consistently, TCL is the best value for any given dollar. And since Costco sells it less expensive than anywhere else, you're getting a great value at Costco. But is it as good as Bravia 7? Of course not, right? Is it as good as the higher end QM7K or QM6K? Of course not. But how much is this TV? So buy it because it's in your budget, and TCL in the lower end TVs, better than anyone else out there. So it's better than any other TV at that price, at that size, from any other brand. I can tell you that. Hey Jesse, how much UV light would leak through a quantum dots in a QD UV panel? So good news, every panel will have an anti-UV layer that's see-through, clear, it doesn't affect the image quality, none. So UV will just be reflected back, absorbed, whatever, but it will not pass through the UV glass shielding, and you're good to go. The question is, hopefully that's enough, right? But of course, it's a consumer product. There's no way the Europeans will let this through the door if there's any kind of transmission of dangerous radiation. So yeah, I'm pretty confident it's fine. It's not their fault. Samsung Europe has a different embargo date than the US. So it's not Samsung Europe's fault. It's Samsung US not calling Europe and saying, hey, when is your embargo date? Oh, it's early. That's cool. We'll put our date a month after yours. Whose fault is that? Definitely not Europe. Wait. All this chat, all I can really hear is, oh my god, Sony rules the world. Sony rules the world. Oh my god. I think I only said that once, but if I said it too loudly, I apologize. I think I mentioned that LG G5 is ruling 2025, right? 2026 might be the year of RGB mini LED in general, Sony, Hisense, all those guys. I tell you right now, I know Sony hasn't released it, but the G5 has got so much momentum. They've won the momentum game, and I've seen the reviews of the S95F, right? Without sharing what I saw personally, based on other reviewers, the G5 has just crushed the S95F in terms of perception, and they are going to take over 2025 with one exception. Panasonic still has yet to release their TV that's based on the same technology as G5, and last year I felt they did better than the G4 with the same technology, with MLA. So if they could do it again this year, that's a dark horse to pay attention to, is Panasonic with a primary tandem RGB OLED. Can they do it? Because in cinema, that's what I'm focused on in terms of what Panasonic will be doing. I think they have a shot of beating the G5 on its own turf with the same technology. Now, gaming, I think LG's, it's in the bank. They're going to have amazing gaming with the G5, and Panasonic has no shot at beating G5 for gaming, but cinema, I cannot wait to make that comparison. So that's another one, highly anticipated. Good question. James says, I do wonder if qdel will have the same image retention issues as the earliest LCDs did. The good news is, quantum dot by its very nature has the lowest image retention or color retention or decay, and that's why they use it in the backlight. It helps with the retention. So if you see red ghosting, it's because some monitors do not use quantum dots. The ones that do use quantum dots have no ghosting issues. So we take that to self-emissive, it should not be a problem. I don't see image retention. Now, if you're talking about burn-in, it should not be an issue. Because it's more stable than OLED. So I don't think burn-in at all would be an issue. And this is a good point. Garrett says, I hope Samsung just keeps pumping out QD-OLEDs, because once you go QD-OLED, you can't go back, even to WOLED. I agree. I really like QD-OLED. The issue is, I don't know if they're going to go to 83-inch QD-OLED ever, because with this new directive from far above Samsung leadership, all the resources now focused on just working this nano LED angle, because an 83-inch QD-OLED will be initially very expensive, and it'll take a lot of time to repay that investment to get it bigger. It's not worth it, because if they see it, wait, 2030, we're replacing it with nano LED. Let's just focus on nano LED and let QD-OLED ride, right? We'll make those improvements that we need to, but it'll be incremental. But there's no need to retool to get up to 83-inch. That's a huge investment that normally we expect 5 years to pay us back. Well, we don't have 5 years. 2030, all new TV technology, right? So, yeah, that's the only drawback is they'll continue to make QD-OLED and, incremental improvements like they did last year to this year. But none of that 83 inches, I don't see it coming unless it's already there. Unless they've already tooled it, it just wasn't ready for 2025, but it'll be ready in 2026. If that's the case, we'll see it in 2026. But if they haven't started yet, it's not happening. Not after this week. All right. Thank you for some super chats. We'll hit those. Getty says, do you think mini LED will last past 2030? Absolutely. Because they're so inexpensive. Now, if mini LED was expensive and nano LED comes in as the alternative, a better value, then of course. The problem is mini LED, well, let's look at the 98-inch QM7K. 4,000 MSRP. Where is it going to be by Black Friday? Closer to $2,000? That's insanity. Like, how are you going to dislodge a good mini LED TV? And I'm calling the QM7K good. Doesn't have to be the best. It just has to be good. At 2,000, at 98 inches? Are you kidding me? So, and that's now, in 2030, how cheap will it be? Like that same QM7K image quality in 2030 will be what, $1,000? And so, with the scale that China is so good at scaling up, if we're at $2,000 today for the QM7K, and you push that 5 years from now, right? What, $1,200 for that same quality at 98 inches? Anything that is a higher end technology is not going to be even close to $1,200. So mini LED is here to stay because of that value proposition, right? Entry level, that's it. It's all mini LED. Christian, thank you for the super chat, my friend. FOMO, wait till Black Friday for a 77-inch G5 or get a 77-inch G4 for $3,000 now. So by Black Friday, the G5, let's say it's $3,300, right? Would you regret getting the G4 now? So what are you getting on Black Friday that you're not getting now? Clearly we know what the brightness levels are, right? It's a little bit brighter. You get 165 hertz. So I think really the big one is the 165 hertz. If that is important to you, you have to wait for Black Friday. But if all you do is watch Columbo, get the G4. If all you do is watch Netflix, older TV shows, the G4 is fine. Now, if you do watch a lot of dark scenes like Game of Thrones, like Dune 2, right, in those dark scenes, the G5 does do it a lot better. Because for me, I got some black crushing, some lot desaturated colors on the G4. I notice it because as a reviewer, you notice these things, but the G5 has solved that. So if those things also bother you, get the G5. But short of 165 hertz and near black issues that you watch a lot of, the G4 is a phenomenal TV. I would recommend that to 99% of the people that asked this question, but that one, the difference looked significant on the live stream you did. It's because of the brightness. I put it on HDR content that was super bright, but if you look at content that was under 1,000 nits, they all looked very similar, right? Except for the Samsung S95D. That thing, there was nothing that looked good in because of the anti-glare issue. But the Sony, the G4, and the G5 look very similar at the less bright scenes. But as you go brighter and brighter, yeah, that G5 really pops. So Christian, if you are a brightness hog, you have to go G5. So that's why I said it depends on your content. Like I think I put in Netflix and they all look very similar. All right. We're going to go on for another maybe 15 minutes, right? So about 90 minutes. I think that's a healthy amount to answer your live stream. And yeah, ask away. Let me throw up another title here. There we go. What is NanoLED? Let's fill up some space there. Make myself a little bit bigger. There we go. Yeah, ask your questions. Went another 5, 10, 15 minutes and let me look at your comments. G5 also stays pure black in a bright room. Definitely the anti-glare improved over the G4. So if you have glare issues that you think would be a problem, G5's anti-glare is excellent this year. I saw the examples they had at the LG workshop. It worked very well. It felt like, well, the way they set it up, because it's LG, but it felt like it worked better than the S95D, which I think at this point, anything is better than the S95D in that kind of lighting. But they didn't have the S95F to compare it to. So that one I'll have to test. This is a good point, and I'll make sure to address this when I get it. Has any of the reviewers for the Samsung S95F mentioned the auto black level adjust feature in bright conditions that HD TV Test Vincent did a video on from IFA, which was a different event? This is vital to combat the negatives of the anti-glare coat. So the auto black level adjust, it's a it's a double-edged sword. First of all, the anti-glare coat lifts the black, right? That's why people complain. It makes everything look a little bit, I want to say that the contrast suffers because the blacks look less black, right? Everything is slightly lifted in a bright room because of the anti-glare. It's like scattering that light on the coating. The problem is auto black level adjust also lifts the black. You can't get blacker than black, right? Auto black level adjust, the blackest you could get is to shut off the pixel. So the problem, Reap, is when the TV is off, S95F, if the TV is off and the light is shining on it and it doesn't look black, there is nothing auto black level adjust can do to make it look blacker, because now it cannot overcome the coating that lifted the black. All it could do is just turn off the pixel. So I think auto black level adjust is for super bright rooms where it looks crushed, then it will lift the black to make it look less crushed, because your eyes are so sensitive to the ambient light, it doesn't perceive the shadow detail. It's all crushed as far as you're concerned. By lifting the blacks and the shadows, you'll see that shadow detail. So that doesn't help with the coating, because the coating is already lifting it. And so I'll have to test it, because it doesn't feel intuitive to me. That is what it would do well. If your complaint is the room is too bright, we'll have to play with the use case for sure, because I know that when we were at CES, what they tested was the TV getting brighter. So not so much auto black level adjust, but ambient light adjust, where based on the room's ambient light, the entire image gets brighter to adjust the ambient light. But it gets brighter to overcome the ambient light and give you that impact, the HDR impact. Will this overcome the negatives of the anti-glare coat? I think it's supposed to overcome the negatives of the ambient room. Without the anti-glare coat, it would only be better. So the anti-glare coat, all it does is diminish the value of the auto black level adjust or the ambient light sensor, because its only purpose is to reduce glare. But in a bright room where there's no glare, meaning it's ambient bright, but there's no direct glare, I think you're gonna have a problem. But it has to be tested because it's so use case specific. Once I test it for a use case that makes it look good, someone else will test it for a use case that makes it look terrible, and you cannot exhaust the possibilities. That's the problem. Without comparing the S95F and the G5 to reference, it's hard to say who is winning. Exactly. This is why we have a reference monitor. I have the BVM3110. So when we test these, comparing it to each other is great, relatively speaking, but then compared to the reference monitor, you know exactly what the image should look like. So you're absolutely right. We will have a reference monitor when I have it in my studio to compare. Wait. HDZ77 says, Samsung is better off making a NanoLED. And then my response to you is, and if they added an anti-glare coating with that, is it going to be better? I mean, you're assuming the anti-glare coating goes away with NanoLED. So let me throw that back at you, HDZ. Is Samsung better off making NanoLED with an anti-glare coating? Because it's not going away anytime soon. That's very comical. Okay, Matthias has a good question, a different angle. G5 seems to be the best this year between the S95F, but Panasonic and Sony, I love films with good motion without the trigger of the OLED static pixels and 24p films. How do you think NanoLED will handle that? So NanoLED, just forget the technology. It's the software. It's always the software when it comes to motion. It's how they tune the software. It's how they manage the technology in the context of the available software and the source, right? All those things come together, and I don't know. I mean, I assume that Sony, we'll start with Sony, they know exactly what they're looking for. They are so good with software tuning when it comes to motion. I think they'll be able to handle it fine. And that applies to LG and Samsung. Now, it may take 2 generations. Maybe the first year, some rough patches. Next year, they'll figure it out. But I don't think it'll be an issue. Oh, Robert just chimed in. Welcome, Value Electronics. Robert at Value Electronics has just received Samsung's latest 2025 QN90F, QN900F, that is their 8K TV, and the QN90F is their flagship 4K. The QN900F is, I think, their second tier 8K. Their top tier is the QN990F. So they have the 900F and the flagship QD-OLED S95F. Thank you, Robert. So, if you guys are Samsung fans, and I am, I like Tizen. That is my preferred operating system and UI right now. He has it. Give him a call, and with a FOMO deal, you get 10% store credit to apply to whatever you want. I strongly suggest applying it to a soundbar or an extended warranty. If you feel that their warranty might be a little sketchy, Robert has an extended warranty for you. Okay. So, Jamie, in Europe, they did this. So, Jamie asked, QD-OLED is for enthusiasts, right? The S95D, S95F. Why can't Samsung ditch that matte screen? Because we know enthusiasts hate it. And just use it for everyday consumer TVs, like everything else, right? So, the problem is the matte screen is expensive. And so they're reserving the expensive technology for their expensive TVs because, and I think I alluded to this, if I not outright had a video about it, Samsung believes that people, once they discover that their TVs would make a great art installation piece, this is what they'll use it for. Ironically, the S95F, not great for art because the fear of burn-in, and they don't get the art upgrade because of burn-in. So why do they have the matte screen? That's what I don't get. I don't mind that it's on the LCD TVs. Don't mind it's on the 8K TVs, right? No, 8K art, I'm all behind that. But the S95F can't display art. That subscription is not even available for the obvious reasons of burn-in. So I have it. And that's kind of been my thing. But I know that their focus groups and their research, based on the glare they're using, when they A/B tested it to that focus group, people preferred the matte screen. So, you guys lost to the focus group. What can I tell you? Swirling Dragon Mist, good question. What brands of TV offer the widest compatibility with other brands in terms of CEC control? We're talking about the HDMI, you control anything connected to your HDMI port. So Swirling Dragon Mist, here's my answer. The newest TV will always have the widest compatibility. Let's start with there. However, that out of the way, no matter how well a brand did with one model, they could screw up the next model. Perfect example, the G4 launched, they did great with prior models, but then the G4 had issues with compatibility with soundbars or whatever, right? And then they eventually fixed it. So ultimately, you would choose a brand that is focused on fixing these things because all brands will face compatibility issues and it's not always their fault. If the soundbar maker forgot something, and now it's the brand's problem to take that into account. So the question is, which brand supports their consumer base the most to fix those things? That one I don't know. Eventually, most of the TV makers I feel have addressed it, some longer than others. I feel that LG kind of addresses this pretty quickly, or rather they recognize it and they address it. Now, how quickly is subject to interpretation depending on who you are. But LG, Sony also, they will receive the information and they do a lot of updates. So I've already gotten 3 Sony updates to my TV over the last 2 months. So I'd say LG, Sony, Samsung, they try to get it right from the get-go, but they take a little bit longer because I know they promised Q90R eARC, Enhanced RC, and then it came like 4 years later or something crazy like that. So they take a little bit longer. Oh, I have Brian on the phone. I think it's my time to get off. Oh, a reminder. He has a premiere coming up. So when we're done here, I'm going to head over there in 30 minutes. Actually, let me answer this right now. Hey, Brian. Oh, I think he's running over to his premiere. I think it starts at 2 o'clock, right? So I think we're good. Yeah. So yes, I hope that answered your question. I like LG, how they deal with CEC issues, and also CEC control. It's generation to generation, but it gets better with each generation, I feel like. So, all right. So let's, we're going to end this. I think it's 1:30, right? I started a little late, so we ran a little late for you guys. Let me know in the comments below, in the chat, NanoLED, are you interested? How much does it have to be for you to switch over, or how much better does it have to be given what you know about OLED? Or you just like mini LED? Let me know. Or is there a technology I didn't mention at all? Hey, thank you everyone for showing up. And KG, should we move to the UK? And of course, because who doesn't want to get these TVs first? My friends, until next time, stop the FOMO.